All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to another exciting episode of Under the Dome. We had some technical problems, so we kind of start the show. As always, it seems to be on a Tuesday night, but I think we've got them pretty much ironed out, and we are ready to go. I'm your host, Alan Ulrich, with my partner in crime here, Mr. Sean Williams. How you doing tonight, Sean?
I'm doing great, man. How's everybody out there in Houdat land? I want to say a very special hello to my brother from another mother, so to speak. One of my Oklahoma boys. Uh, Seriously, a guy very, very, very close to my heart, very special to me. Mark Jones. I'm gonna wish you a happy birthday, brother. Uh, and also a guy that once worked for me for PFS. Very talented writer, very diehard Saints guy, Jet Tullins. I hope you have a fantastic birthday tomorrow. We invite you guys to subscribe to our podcast on iTunes and on YouTube. We're growing by the day, and I think that's awesome, and I love it. Without any further gilding of the lily and ado, well, you guys got to be Heath Ledger fans to get that. That's from A Knight's Tale. Anyway, um, our very special guest tonight, and this time for a reason. Not just because we enjoy having someone named Rose on our show for Valentine's Day. Um, we want to welcome in a very special get. Well, is it insulting to you to be referred to as a guest on this program now?
It does. It isn't. It isn't. I'm like that guy on the sitcom with the recurring role. I'll come in, I'll do a couple prop falls every few weeks, and then off back on with everybody's life.
The unofficial first member of our broadcast team, as always, from Canal Street Chronicles, Mr. Bob Rose. And at this point, it is my distinct honor and, you know, when we started Under the Dome, I'm sorry, Bob, I got to go off script here. Vince McMahon would throw a belt at me, but I'm going to do it. Whenever you start something like this, don't do it on your own. Um, to have the opportunity to do what we do, more oftentimes than not, is because someone along the way gave you an opportunity. It may have just been a toenail in the door, but they gave you a chance to show, hey, I can do this. Uh, and I have absolutely no hesitation whatsoever in saying that Bob's one of us. We always introduce him as kind of laughingly as the unofficial third member of our broadcast. That's sincere, guys. That we laugh when we say it, but there's no pun or joke intended. Bob is the real deal. This guy writes about it, he lives it, he loves it. This is his life. Uh, and without any further hesitation, I want to turn the floor over to Mr. Bob Rose. He has a very special announcement that we are thankful that he chose our platform to shout it from. But go ahead, Bob.
Well, thank you, Sean, and thank you, Alan. And you guys are truly a member of my family. I feel honored to be a member of yours. And I know we have a lot of draft stuff to get to tonight. And you guys have a couple big announcements for next week's show also. But it's going to become official, and I leaked out word today that I will be getting my own show on the Saints News Network on Wednesday nights, starting next Wednesday, the 18th. My producer is going to be Mr. Kyle T. Mosley, who has been amazing and helping me, through the bumps that this industry can. And guys have been absolutely glorious. John Pinto, I know you're tuning in. You've been great to me as well. Mr. Barry Hurst has got me my start in this industry. Mr. John Hendricks, my boss over at Canal Street Chronicles, where I will continue to write. He has been amazing to me, as well as the other guys over at CSC. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be primarily, obviously, a Saints show. Like I said, we're going to start it next Wednesday. We feel that's a good time to get ready for the draft. It's a week before the draft. So we're going to kind of get our feet wet next Wednesday and then go into full-blown draft preview the following week. And it's going to be 8 o'clock Eastern time and 7 p.m. Central time. Right now, a couple diagnostic and technical checks to go through. So I don't know if I'll be video like you guys, but I know there'll be various ways to tune in. Probably the easiest way is to be a subscriber to the Saints News Network or any of our pages on Facebook. I know you guys, I've learned so much when you guys have advertised your show and previewed your show. So I plan on stealing your lead. But I'm hoping to follow you guys after your Tuesday night show. Hoping to follow you up on Wednesday. Big shoes to fill for sure, but I'm really excited. And thank you guys, all the listeners and viewers right now. None of this would be possible without you guys. So hopefully this is just the start of something a lot bigger. But I'm really excited.
Well, I got to disagree with you as far as if it weren't for the two of us, it wasn't. I've always been a firm believer in the cream always rises to the top. Brother, you got what it takes. You got the work ethic. You got the get in there and do it. You've got the absolute trivial word, but you got the die-hard mentality of I'm going to make this work or I'm going to die trying. And absolutely no doubt whatsoever you're going to make a run of this. And much like a parent who watched their child walk down the aisle and receive their diploma and walk out into the world, that's kind of the way I feel every time one of you guys that I lovingly refer to as my guys, and there's several of you, but every time one of you guys branch out on your own and start your own thing, my heart just swells with pride, and I'm overwhelmed. I knew you guys were capable of doing it, and I'm so thankful that you actually have the opportunity to do so now. Alan, before we start crying, you want to direct us in another direction?
All I know is I thought for a little while there we were in the Mary Tyler Moore show, because all that was missing in that conversation was you taking your hat off and throwing it in the air with, "We're going to make it after all." I mean, it was the whole spiel. The whole time I'm listening, I'm going, this is the Mary Tyler Moore theme song. I am living the Mary Tyler Moore show theme song for you guys that were not fortunate enough to be born in the 70s. Let's see. I'm sorry, I have to do my phone here because we have gotten in trouble for, oh man, this speaker sucks. You can't hear it. Oh well. The idea, Google the Mary Tyler Moore show theme song from the 70s. Those of you who were not alive to see that show. And then go back and watch Sean's speech, especially the last line. The name of the song is called Love Is All Around. And you're going to make it after all. Summarizes that speech you just gave.
Okay, well, I'm going to start printing out my speeches and getting them to you.
Well, you wanted me to take a different direction. There you go.
Well, I I could do a lot worse than Mary Tyler Moore.
That's
I'm not
right.
going to throw my hat in the air, but
I'm more like the Dick Van Dyke. I'm more like the Dick Van Dyke show when he trips over the ottoman. So that's just me.
Yeah.
Okay, Bob, in your regular job, you've been doing draft profiles. I'm not talking about that job you get paid for. You have to show up to that place. I'm talking about the job you do for fun.
Right.
You've been doing various draft profiles. Who do you see the Saints looking at 27 in the first round?
And you see it in the mock drafts too, and talking to you guys in the chat rooms that we have. So many people are all over the place. I know what Sean Payton has said numerous times in the offseason that the team wants to add, and I quote, a couple of pass catchers, which leads you to believe receiver and tight end are going to be highly targeted. And he's stressing an edge rusher. Well, I don't believe he ever used the term edge rusher, but he did stress pass rusher. We look what's going to be available in this year's draft, and I know I'm not the only one that has this opinion. This is not a deep draft for edge rushers. So I think first and foremost for number 27, and I also don't think, aside from Bradley Chubb from NC State, who's going to go in the top 5, if not the top 3, there's nobody worth trading up for and what you'd have to give up to get up there. So I think as we're all watching on draft night, pay attention to see if any of the, a couple of edge rushers, Davenport from UTEP, Harold Landry from Boston College, there's various opinions on him. Sam Hubbard from Ohio State, I just did a profile on him. Watch to see if any of them fall, and we might get a better idea of where the Saints might go then. I'll tell you where I don't think they're going to go is quarterback. I really, really don't think they're going to draft a quarterback, not only at 27, but some people have them moving up. I think that they're going to target a tight end. And I have 2 guys every year that I kind of tap as my guys. For the draft, I pump them up. I kind of hope that my team gets them, and everything like that. Subscribers to Under the Dome will remember Alan and I going back and forth on Hassan Riddick last year. But I have my eyes. I love this kid for the last year and a half now. Mike Gesicki from Penn State. He's a Jimmy Graham clone, and that he's highly athletic. He's a downfield threat. He is a blown up pass receiver.
There's your boy right there, Hassan Riddick. Yeah. We talked about this. In fact, the other night, Sean and I were off the air talking about this, and I was like, who the hell was the name of that guy that Bob liked so much? What was his name? I was looking all over the place for him, because the funny thing is there are several pass rushers who sort of fit that same mold of that Hassan Riddick you were talking about from last year. Very light in the pants, but have a lot of speed, where they're more of a traditional 3-4, maybe outside linebacker, but don't really play linebacker. They're really a pure pass rusher. So there's a few of them out there like that, and I totally agree with you. I don't see, unless someone they really, really like drops to the in the low 20s, I think they are looking at offense in that first round, and it could be tight end. And here's something I keep seeing in mock drafts, which I can't believe is going to happen, because I can think of at least 3 teams that would jump on him. But I'm seeing Calvin Ridley dropping out of the top 10, sliding all the way to like 28, 29. I just can't see that happening. What do you think about Calvin Ridley and this sudden slide he's got?
I can't figure it out. I mean, he's not the sharpest route runner in the world, but receivers from Alabama usually aren't. Why? Because they only throw the ball 5 times a game. But I mean, Ridley has all the skill set that is necessary to be a number 1 wide receiver in the NFL. He's got decent size. He's got NFL speed. He's got deep speed, as they call it. Nice hands, everything like that. And I'm with you. I can't see him. I don't see him going top 10, but he's going to go somewhere in 12, 15, 20. I really don't see him dropping until the mid or late 20s. But to your point, I see another name mocked later and later in the first round is that Cortland Sutton. Kind of a clone of Michael Thomas, not necessarily known for speed, but he's a big target that catches everything and highly productive. Between Ridley and Sutton, Ridley's going to be the first receiver off the board. Yeah. And he's someone, even if Ridley is available at, say, 18 or 20, someone is going to move to get him. And I don't see that being New Orleans. I don't think that they're going to make a move of that caliber to get a number one type of receiver when they already have Michael Thomas and this offense has shifted to a more balanced attack. Maybe the 2011, 2012 Saints would have made that move. This team doesn't need to make that move. They can either sit at 27 and see what becomes available to them offensively. And if they don't like what's on their board of wide receiver, they can go tight end. They have that luxury. And I've been wanting to ask you guys, both of you guys, this over the last several days or week. We know Sean Payton has never traded down in the first round or even out of the first round. Can you see that happening this year?
The only way I can see that happening is...
You mean trading back from 27 somewhere beyond that?
Yeah,
somewhere dropping behind that, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, the only way I can see that happening is it's the draft from hell that someone is going like it. All the quarterbacks go early. The tight ends go, say 3 tight ends go early, and the defensive line, the pass rushers and defensive tackles they like are all gone. That's the only, and I'm talking about people trading up and getting back into the first round or moving up in the first round and taking these guys, and the Saints can't move. That's the only way I can see the Saints going, well, you know what? All we have left are running backs and offensive linemen. We're going to trade back and try and get more value. Here's the thing I see about this draft, and I've heard this by several people, including Mike Detillier, that this draft is about 20 to 23 players deep right now. And once you get past, say, 20, it becomes, they all become borderline one first day, second day, first and second round kind of players. So that's why I kind of see the Saints more trading up than down. I think they would be more interested in moving up, maybe to get a quarterback. I'm not totally saying that that's not going to happen. I still think they love Baker Mayfield that much that they would be willing to do that if he's still there between 8 and 10. But I can see them moving up to go grab a tight end, moving up to go grab one of those defensive ends, moving up to grab a defensive tackle. I don't see them trading back unless it's just a nightmare draft for them where they missed on everybody they were targeting. How about you, Sean?
Well, no, it's hard to say. About the only way that I see the New Orleans Saints taking a running back would be if they had a list of 26 players that they wanted more than a running back, and all 26 were taken by the time they come along. And I say that because, earlier this week, I want to say Jeff Duncan and Larry Holder maybe insinuated that the New Orleans Saints would take a running back if that was the best player available, number 27. And I disagree completely, vehemently. You spend a first-round draft pick on a running back, where are you going to put it?
Right.
The only place for him is on the bench because you have Mark Ingram is closing in on being the franchise all-time leading rusher, and then you got Alvin Kamara, the offensive rookie of the year a year ago. What are you going to do with him? To me, regardless of who you pick, Sony Michelle, Darius Geis, it makes very little difference. If you spend that number 27 pick on a running back, you are absolutely, unequivocally, without doubt, wasting a pick in terms of the long-term interest of this franchise. I firmly believe that.
Well, I didn't mean to imply that they were going to take a running back. What I meant to say was that let's just say it's been a nightmare draft, and all the players that they really targeted are gone, and what's left are essentially offensive linemen and running backs. And that's just, I'm just throwing that out there because personally, I think probably 2, maybe 3 running backs will go in that first round. Clearly, Barkley's going to go, and if there's any justice in the world, he'll end up with Cleveland. And Darius Geis will go as well. After that, it's kind of a drop-off because I don't know what you've got left. And, you know, I've heard some people say they want the Saints to get what's his name? The kid from Georgia, not no, the one who came off the knee injury. Chubb. Yeah. And I think if any Saints fan that's talking about Chubb for the Saints, that's basically a Mark Ingram clone, except without the knee injury history. Same size, same playing style. Yeah, Nick Chubb. Same playing style, same 5'10", 225. That's almost identical to Ingram. I mean, there's no need for one. With Alvin Kamara in there, there's just no need for any running back. You may look at a kick returner later on in the draft. That's a day 3 pick. You're looking at a kick returner probably late in the 5th, 6th round, something like that. You're probably looking for. That's when you start looking at a running back, maybe. Other than that, no. Bob froze in mid-drink.
Yeah,
I'm
looks
still
like
here.
He's thinking hard.
Yeah, you're still there. It's like you were drinking and your picture froze at the bottom.
I'm getting some comments on the live chat that the only person that they can see is Alan. Alan, but Sean and Bob.
There you go. All right, Bob.
I wasn't going to tell you that they said their dreams would be haunted, but go ahead.
All right. Given that we've said that the second round is second in end of the first, second round, maybe early third round, is really where this draft is made, and the Saints don't have a pick anywhere in that range. After 27, you go a long time before you get to 91 to make a pick again.
Yep.
This is typical Saints. I can see them aggressively trying to trade back up and jump into that second round. Possibly even if they can't get in the second, at least in the top of the third. If the Saints say take a tight end in the first round, what kind of player do you think they would target in the second round, aggressively go after?
Well, first and foremost, I completely agree with you that I would be shocked if they didn't come out of this draft with at least 1 second-round pick. I had it in my first mock draft about a week and a half ago. Projected they would trade, and Saints fans, look at the second round. Look at who has second-round picks. There's Cleveland and Indianapolis both have 2 picks in the second round. Indy has back-to-back in the top of the second round. One of those teams are going to move around somewhere, somehow. So I do believe that the Saints are going to make a move to get a second-round pick. And if they do go tight end with their first-round pick at 27, I can see them going best available defensive lineman with the second pick, be it if a Sam Hubbard drops or maybe a Lorenzo Carter would be a specialized pass rusher, kind of one of those 3-4 type of outside linebackers or 4-3 specialist rushers that you referred to, Alan. Look at the defensive tackles. some people are projecting Payne from Alabama, Alabama's defensive tackle, to tumble a little bit, or Tavon Bryan from Florida. Everybody has pegged for somewhere in that late first, early second round. But yeah, I mean, if the Saints get their tight end with their first pick, but they move into the second round to get a second pick, I don't think it's going to be to target a wide receiver. And I know we were going to talk about wide receivers in a second. I think wide receivers are clogged as far as good value at day 2 or day 3 picks. But again, like we just said, defensive line a little bit thin. So that's where if they do trade into the second round, that's where I see them targeting.
Yeah, I like Tavion Bryan a lot in the second round. I like him at 27 too, but I would rather him early in the second round because one of my things I've always pointed out about the Saints is the Saints like to have guys who can kick out when they have to, but also play inside. Tavion Bryan can play well inside, but you can also play him kind of that 2-gap outside, defensive end if they only rush 3. So he gives them some flexibility in there, and I like him a lot. And I totally agree with you. I think if they go tight end in the first round, that's where they target their edge rusher or their pass rusher. I shouldn't say edge rusher, their pass rusher there. I think, they won't address the linebacker position until day 3. And we're going to talk about the receivers in a minute. I think receiver is next on the priority list. A lot of it has to do with, I think, with Cameron Meredith and what happens on Friday, whether or not the Bears match. I don't think the Bears are going to match only because they've already spent a lot of money on receivers. That's tying up a lot of money and essentially into a third receiver. I was reading something on the Bears equivalent of Fansided. I think it's called Goggle Bears or something like that. It's a Bears site. Okay, and I was reading about that, and they were really ripping into Ryan Pace, which is actually rather amusing because I've always said this: if you go and read other fan pages about their team, take the names out, and it's the same thing written about every team by every fan. The general managers are stupid. They call on Ryan Pace boy blunder. The general managers are stupid. The coach is an idiot. We have no talent on the team. We can't draft. We don't get good free agents. I mean, it's all the way through. It's hilarious to read because I'm like, my God, I'm reading Saints fan stuff. But they were ripping into Ryan Pace because they're like, for an extra $1 million, they could have tagged Cameron Meredith with a second-round tender, pay him $2.9 million instead of $1.9 million is what they tagged him for. $2.9 million, and no one would have touched him because no one's going to be willing to give up a second-round pick if the Bears decide not to match. But because they get no compensation, the fans are livid. They are livid over what's going on because they're like, well, here we go. We're the farm club of the rest of the NFL. The Saints are just going to come in there, and they know how to use receivers because they got a quarterback. We don't have a quarterback, and they can do stuff. It's funny to read. So that's my feeling. They don't match on Cameron Meredith, and I think that shapes the Saints draft philosophy as far as a wide receiver because while you need a true 2, a young 2 to go along with Michael Thomas, with Cameron Meredith there and with Ted Ginn, it kind of takes that pressure off. How do you guys see that? Do y'all agree with that?
Sean? Okay. I absolutely agree with you. First, I completely agree. I don't believe that the Bears are going to match the offer for Meredith. Because keep in mind, they had another restricted free agent, their cornerback Fuller, and Green Bay signed him to an offer sheet early in free agency. Bears matched it within hours. Now, that's not to say that they're just going to let Meredith walk. My guess is that they're probably trying to talk to his agent to try to keep him on a team-friendly long-term deal. But if that deal hasn't already been done, I can see Cameron Meredith, them not matching the offer to Meredith. And if that's the case, I know I've seen and heard some Saints fans talking about worried about Meredith's ACL injury from last year. That happened early in the season, and this isn't 1985 or 1990 anymore. ACLs mean nothing to the recovery of a football player unless it's multiple on the same knee, and we know about that. So yeah, I think having a receiver like Cameron Meredith into the fold, that doesn't necessarily knock the need for a receiver completely off New Orleans draft board, but it does reprioritize things a little bit. They don't necessarily have to force the issue and reach for someone that might be a little bit lower on their draft board with a higher pick. Because I do believe that that wide receiver in this draft isn't necessarily top heavy as far as talent goes, but it is extremely deep. So they can look at at the same luxury that we talked about before at 27, watching how that draft board falls. With the talent that's in place on the team, and if they happen to land Meredith, they can look at that draft board and what's left at pick number 91 in the third round, and if they see a defensive player that they like better, then they can afford to wait on a wide receiver. If they don't get Meredith, that changes everything. I think that they have to move to get a receiver at that pick, and there'll be plenty of them available. So I mean, it's purely luxury, but what happens with Meredith is very key to what happens to what the Saints draft strategy is going to be at that position.
Sean,
I tend to agree with that. From all indications, and I do a little bit of stuff with the draft. I don't get nearly in depth as Bob and some of his contemporaries do by any means, but from all indications, this draft is not deep in any way whatsoever, shape, form, or fashion at the wide receiver position. And if you go back to last year and you analyze and isolate the biggest deficiencies offensively and defensively, it was third down conversion on both sides of the ball. Saints needed a third down receiver that they could depend on. Not last year, but the year prior, that was Willie Snead, who was within 100 yards of eclipsing that 1,000-yard mark, and then this past year caught 8 passes, 5 passes, 8 passes somewhere in there. Not even 10 passes. I'll put it that way. Now, I think the biggest thing moving forward is this kid from Chicago going to be signed to the Saints, or will the Bears match that offer? Which as Bob alluded to, I don't think that Chicago is going to be in position to invest that much money in wide receiver when they have no choice but to invest that much in the defensive backfield. Is that going to preclude them making a serious run at Willie Snead, who apparently, from all indications, the only serious offer coming in at this point in time for services is the Baltimore Ravens, and it's so far above the radar that outside of the diehard circle of the people that post every last gasp of the New Orleans Saints team movements, they know absolutely nothing about it. There's not, outside of Breeze, Cam Jordan, and coming up on the time for Michael Thomas, Willie Snead, Alvin Kamara. Outside of those, that's a very small group of players. Nobody cares what's going on with the New Orleans Saints until they have to deal with it. And that being said, I don't think we have to worry so much about other teams raiding our pantry so much as we have to worry about pacifying our own players.
Well, my thing with Snead is, they tendered him because they want to bring him back, but they're not desperate if they lose him. I think they still want to work with him. They want to see if 2017 was an aberration, if they can bring back the 2016 Snead, but they also want to bring competition, and I think that's key with the Meredith signing and what kind of receivers. And I put receivers in with the plural because I think they want to bring in more than just one draft pick as a receiver. I think they want to bring somebody in to compete with the slot, and they also want to bring somebody in who can be a kick returner, someone with some speed and some size and with better hands than Tommy Lee Lewis. I think they love Tommy Lee Lewis's speed, but I think his size and his tendency to put the ball on the ground really concerned Peyton, because the one feature of special teams that has not improved from last year, 2016 to this year, has been the kick return game. We got better at our place kicking. We got better on protections. We got better in our coverage. Morstead's always solid, but the return game has been terrible, except when they put Alvin Kamara in for kickoffs. That was the only time where you actually saw any kind of development or any kind of production out of the kick return game. So that's where I think the Saints will look for another receiver. I don't think they're going to look at a running back, but I do think they will look at a receiver in that position and see what they can get out of it. I think they tried the running back thing, and they haven't liked what they got out of the running backs they've drafted to do the kick return. But I think they want to see if they can get something out of a receiver. So, Bob, who do you like late in the draft as an edge rusher or maybe as a linebacker? We're talking day 3, say 4th round, 5th round. We've got 2 5ths, I believe, 2 6ths. So who do you like later? Someone that we can kind of keep our eyes on as, hey man, this is somebody who might end up being something special.
And I don't know if any of these guys will fall even as far as the 5th and especially the 6th round. But the Columbus pipeline is something to pay close attention to. There's 3 guys that are going to be probably at a stretch late day 2 picks, but probably more likely available on Tyquan Lewis, an edge rusher from Ohio State. Jalen Holmes, also same position, edge rusher from Ohio State. They had an extremely deep defensive line.
I like that guy. I like Holmes a lot. a lot.
Yeah, the only thing Holmes is his effort was sometimes questioned. I don't see how you could do that. I mean, they had that they always rotated guys anyway, so none of them got a lot of snaps. But yeah, I'm with you. I mean, Holmes looks to have the bigger upside, just with his vegetables and ability. Another guy, and he's not an edge rusher, but Chris Worley is a really solid linebacker from Ohio State. One of those guys, definitely a 2-down linebacker, kind of limited athletic ability for pass coverage. Ideally, it's a Mateo type, that they brought in last year. He would purely be a special teams or a 1 or 2 down linebacker, purely to provide depth for the position. And a guy that I wrote about, I think the article released yesterday, R.J. McIntosh from Miami. He's a real disruptor at defensive tackle, but he kind of has the body of a bigger defensive end as well. He's one of those versatile type of guys that you were talking about, Alan, where they like to move him inside or out. McIntosh isn't one of those guys that's going to require double team blocking because of his run stuffing ability. Uh, he he likes to move around a lot. He has a really devastating like overarm move. He needs to get skinny to get between the blockers because he's not going to overpower too many blockers. But with some good coaching, he could be a very effective inside out guy too. I really like RJ McIntosh. But some projections have him going maybe even as early as the third round. And again, that's based off of potential, the P word that gets coaches fired, potential, rather than production. Yeah, and there's always a couple other guys that are floating around out there too. But those are the guys that were really jumping out to me as we can kind of talking about who we wanted to do draft profiles on. Obviously everybody's going to target the first and second round guys, but we always try to do like later round value too. But those are some of the guys that jumped out to me.
Yeah, a guy I like a lot, and he's kind of a classic tweener. Is he a defensive end? Is he an outside linebacker? It's a kid from Tulane. I just had his name a second ago, and I want to make sure I say it properly. Ade Urana, Adearuna. He is a like David Onyemata, like Akeem Hicks. He is somebody who is fairly new to football, especially the American football version. This guy is 6'6", 262. So he's built like a good sized defensive end. But he's more of an outside. He was kind of an outside linebacker in the 3-4 scheme that Tulane ran, but he played more of an outside linebacker with his hand in the dirt kind of player. So he's very raw. He needs some grooming, but that's somebody who you could see the Saints taking a chance on late in the 5th, maybe even the 6th round if he lasts that long. And it's one of those guys where, you kind of have to look at Mike Detilliers' draft book to kind of really get a good thumbnail sketch on him because he's that raw. But that's somebody I like a lot late in the draft, somebody I like to see the Saints look at. Local product, not a local kid, but he's a local product. So interesting player to watch. How about LSU players? We hear a lot about LSU players among various Saints fans.
Man, the Saints ain't going to have no.
Oh, I know. A lot of discussion about Key.
We would have made it to Super Bowl if we had just drafted Shaq Lawson a year ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We hear a lot about that. We hear a lot about Key.
That's kind of an inside with Alan and I. But anyway, Chris.
But we hear a lot about Key. We hear some chalk talk. I can't even say the words together at the same time. You hear some people, not many people this year. I think people finally learned they're not bringing up Darius Geis, but those big three LSU players. How do you see them falling as far as the Saints? And I'll tell you one name after you finish. I'll tell you one name from LSU. I can actually see the Saints looking at in the 5th round if he lasts that long. But go ahead.
And I have a name too. He's kind of LSU in the 5th and 6th round, but we'll get into that in a minute. As far as the three names that you mentioned, I mean, Sean, you'd said it before. The Saints are not going to draft a running back. They're not. Unless it's a patented Sean Payton project, like late in the 6th, 7th round. Let's see what he's got, et cetera, et cetera. So that throws Geis right off the draft board. Okay. Arden Key, there's too many other guys that have a more complete game at that position. And I don't think, and Key has some, we'll call them off the field concerns that I don't think I don't think the Saints are going to invest very highly in a guy. I'm not going to call him a questionable character because I don't know him. But when you couple the stories that you hear along with with the holes in his game, I cannot see him being in a New Orleans Saint uniform. So you throw Key off the draft board, and that brings us to the receiver, Chark. He actually he does have a nice skill set. I like his game, but a lot of people are projecting him. I've seen projections for him to go as high as like the mid-20s. At the very least, it looks like he might be somewhere in the mid-second round. We just sat here and talked about receiver, especially if New Orleans gets Meredith. I don't think the three of us can see them going after a wide receiver. Certainly at 27, and definitely not to move on one in the second round. So that throws DJ off of our board with the big three that are available in LSU. Once again, Saints fans, they will not be wearing a New Orleans Saints uniform.
I agree.
Who's your guy?
Okay, I'm gonna give Sean Payton the clap. I'm looking at Will Clapp. I'm looking at Will Clapp, the center from LSU. You know, I was saving that joke all night. I'm looking at Will Clapp as the center, as the possible center that from LSU, as somebody. He's projected 4th, 5th round guy. He's a center / guard kind of player. He's not the biggest guy, but a good technician. He works well, I think, in the zone blocking scheme that the Saints are going to employ. And then you look at the age of Unger. I know they've got a guy on the roster right now they like a lot, Cameron Tom. But I can see them looking at a guy like Clapp who can come in and maybe be that swing guard center guy that can kind of work and develop. And there's not a lot of pressure to get him to start because you've got a solid starter in Unger, but it's someone they can try and develop.
Well, and remember too, they lost Calamete they lost Calamete in the agency.
Yes,
that can be understated. I like the fact that they brought Jermon Bushrod in, but I mean he's outside of his career, and most mock drafts you see, or draft experts or analysis that you listen to or read, and in my mock draft too with a 5th round pick, I think most of us can see going with that type of good solid technician that they'll be able to develop sort of. Clapp is absolutely among that group that could be drafted in, like you said, Alan, probably the 5th, maybe 6th round.
Yeah. Who was your guy you had? What LSU player did you have in mind?
Well, he's not currently an LSU player. He's actually a transfer. And I talked about him before. Trey Quinn, receiver from
I like him a lot. I like him a lot as well.
He started his career, I think he played 2 years with LSU before he transferred to SMU. And he outproduced Portland Sutton down there. And he'll be available 4th, 5th, maybe 6th round because of his measurables. He's not going to blow you away with the 40 time. He doesn't have great height. He doesn't have a terrific vertical leap. All he does is he produces. He's a technically sound route runner, and he catches the football and makes plays on 3rd down. I like Quinn a lot.
Yeah, I like him a lot too. He was one of the 2 players I thought of as receivers. Again, depending on what happens with Meredith, I like him and I like Michael Gallup.
Yeah.
For a lot of the reasons why I liked Connor Kupp last year. I think Michael Gallup has a lot of that same kind of game to him. Not a burner, not an incredibly gifted receiver, just an incredibly hard worker who works at getting open and has like Velcro hand, just catches everything. And I like him a lot as well. So, again, receivers, there's so much fluidity right now, depending on how this draft falls, where the Saints are going to target a receiver. If that tight end goes in that first round, it really, and they can get Cameron Meredith, it takes a lot of pressure off of them. But if the tight ends all go early, they have to take defensive line in that first round. And they don't get their tight end they want. The pressure really gets on, and Cameron Meredith, the Bears do match it. The pressure really builds on the Saints to kind of, okay, now tight end's going to go push back a ways in the draft, probably to day 3, and we're going to trade up into round 2 and target one of those big receivers, an Anthony Miller kind of player, to try and get that number 2 speed guy in there to help us out. And so, there's so many more dynamics have to be played out still. We'll know a lot more by Friday, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And you mentioned Anthony Miller. I'm working on a draft profile. He's going to be my next draft profile at Canal Street. Might get it done tonight for release tomorrow. At the very minimum, it'll be released Thursday morning. Yeah, I mean, like Miller a lot. You mentioned Gallup. And all 3 of us have mentioned the Saints lack of and keep an eye on Dante Pettis in Washington. Again, he's not the sharpest route runner, but he can make plays down the field, and he's an absolutely electrifying punt returner. All guys, and you throw in a Deshaun Hamilton from Penn State and Marcel Aitman from Oklahoma State, and between the 3 of us, we can mention 3 or 4 other names. All are going to be available in the second through early to mid 4th round. But I mean, it's like you said, Alan, and like you said, it's a really fluid situation. We need to watch what happens with the Titans. I know we already talked about Pizzicki, but Dallas Goddard and Hayden Hurst are also right at the top of that draft class. And who you talk to, I mean, they're 1, 2, 3. Different people have them ranked different ways, but they're definitely your top 3 tight ends. And you have Mark Andrews from Oklahoma, just a shade below that. And then after that, if they're gone by the time the Saints pick 27 and or 91 or unable to move in the second round to get them, they're not going to get one until late in the draft, if at all.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think, that you have that small group at the very top of the tight end class, and they're kind of overvalued right now because there's so few impact tight ends in this draft. So these are really more, in my opinion, more second round picks that are going to get pushed up into the first round because the need is there. Yep. And you're going to see a lot of people reach for tight ends because of the Jimmy Grahams, the Ron Gronkowskis, the Trey Burtons, what you saw in, the Zach Ertz, what you saw in the NFL these past 3 or 4 seasons. Those tight ends will get overvalued, and you're going to see a couple of them go in that first round. So, how this draft plays out, and the Saints may not end up, I agree with you totally, the Saints may end up not addressing all their needs in the draft, and people can get really bent out of shape, but it's with the receiving core being as deep as it is. I'm talking about as far as the draft, not on the Saints roster, but the receiving position being as deep as it is. If you don't get that tight end, you don't have to reach for one just to have one. I think they bought some time with, and this is why they signed Ben Watson. They bought some time with Watson to at least wait a year if you don't get the tight end you really want. And it's why I think Fleener is still on the roster instead of him getting cut early and being a designated post-June 1st cut. Because if you don't get the player you want, you could do a lot worse than having Fleener and Watson as your tight ends and going into 2018.
Oh, absolutely. And I saw you were nodding your head, Sean, because I remember you being one of the ones saying when everybody was talking about Watson getting signed, and people saying, "Oh, that's definitely going to be a mentor for a first round, or an early round pick at tight end." And while I think that that's a good strategy, you were one of the ones saying, "No, that means that they don't have to pick a tight end now, because they have a guy that Drew not only trusts, but can still be productive this late in his career."
Sean, go ahead and chime in. We kind of been dominating this conversation, but go ahead.
Yeah, I think the signing of Watson signaled that they were willing to put off the necessity of the tight end position for another year, knowing what they're going to be bringing in Ben Watson, knowing that you have Josh Hill, Man, and probably least likely, but still certainly possible, Fleener behind him. I think that puts the necessity of bringing a preeminent tight end into this offense year away. You see the addressing of the wide receiver position with what you had last year, plus Michael Thomas. You have Ted Ginn. You have the kid from Chicago. God forgive me for not knowing his name. But you see all that being done. You see the linebacker position with Demario Davis being addressed. You see all of these different pieces being put into place. And I'm just curious, am I the only one? Of course, I think there were probably 6 gunmen on the grassy knoll. Am I the only one?
Of course, he made the comment about the gunman on the grassy knoll. So, of course, Zuckerberg is shutting your butt down.
Thanks, Sean.
Yeah. There you go. He froze.
Am I the only one that thinks that all of these fingers in the dike at tight end, linebacker, wide receiver, all of these things are going to inevitably add up to the New Orleans Saints ultimately making a move, maybe to bring the crimson and cream to the black and gold. Of course, Alan doesn't know what I'm talking about, so I'll bring Baker Mayfield into the Houdat Nation. Alan's eyebrows just divided.
No, I've been floating that trial balloon out there for a long time, and we, Bob and I talked about it in the very beginning of the show. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. I think if they get all the pieces they want, if you get a Cameron Meredith to sign, if you feel like you can afford to make that move, and you see Mayfield sliding into 8, and I picked 8 and 10 because 8 is Ryan Pace. That's the ex-Saint employee who's the general manager of the Bears. There's a relationship with there. 10, I think, is the Raiders. The Raiders aren't interested in a quarterback. You've had some history working with the Raiders. There's a possibility for movement there as well. So both of those are possibilities. If Mayfield gets into the 8 through 10 range, I think Buffalo's on the phone. I think Miami's on the phone. Because I think both of those teams are interested in Mayfield as well. So it's going to cost you a lot to move up to go get him.
See, that's what I've held. That's the catch-22.
Yeah.
You are possibly going to get the penultimate successor to Drew Brees and his legacy, but number one, that's going to basically spell out on your calendar how much longer Drew Brees is going to be in New Orleans Saints, and also number two, that's going to seriously and markedly limit the capabilities that you have to build and expand your roster moving forward for the next at least 2, possibly 3 to 4 years for whatever deal that you have to make to possibly swing that deal. And Al and I have talked about this off air several times. I don't see the New Orleans Saints trying to move into the number 3, number 4 position, try and draft a Baker Mayfield. But as Alan alluded to a moment ago, I believe that if Mayfield should beyond that number 8 position, when suddenly it's not mortgaging the farm for the next 4 to 5 years, make that deal. You know, I can't say that Sean Payton wouldn't do it. And by the same token, looking at the big picture, I don't think that if you make a deal to get a Baker Mayfield, to get as much as I don't particularly care for the guys, Josh Rosen, the Sam Darnold, Josh Allen, to get that next quote unquote franchise guy, I don't think that's much of a price to pay. What do you guys think?
Well, a couple things. And I'm going to be very, very, very careful in what I say about not only Mayfield, but the other quarterback's name that has been linked to the Saints, especially more in the last couple weeks, Lamar Jackson. I don't like either one of their games, but that's another at all. But that's another show for another time. The way I look at it, as far as should they get a quarterback, I don't necessarily think anymore that if they bring in a young first round draft choice that necessarily puts the clock on Drew Brees, because we saw the template changed a little bit, with New England, and they realized that they still had Tom Brady near the top of his game, so they got a small bonanza to move to Garoppolo. So I think that changed everybody's thinking, and that, okay, well, your veteran quarterback now only has 2 years left. That's still probably the rule more than it is the exception, but still. So keeping that in mind, if a Baker Mayfield or a Lamar Jackson falls to them at 27, that's where I can agree with you a little bit, Alan and Sean. It wouldn't surprise me to see them pull the trigger. Here's where my problem is. If they move up to get either one of these guys, and it would take a good bit of movement to get up to, especially where Mayfield is projected to go. You're talking about giving up number 27, their first round pick. They don't have a second round pick. So they're talking about more than likely giving up your third round pick at number 91, and at least a second round pick next year, if not a first. But let's forget about next year's picks for right now. You're now moving to get a quarterback who's not going to play this year, and you don't have a first round pick. You don't have a third round pick. You can't pick another player, barring movement, which they now don't have the capital to do. They now don't have a pick until, I think, 127 in the fourth round. Yep. We've seen what Minnesota has done in the offseason, and we've seen what Los Angeles has done in the offseason. We know what Philadelphia and Carolina and Atlanta already have. And we've talked about it on here before. You're not going to buy a championship in the offseason, but you still got to keep up with what your opponents already have. And signing Meredith is key. I think we all agree on that. And that if they do manage to sign him, that does give them some flexibility with those draft picks. We've talked about that all night too. But say you don't sign Meredith, you still have a major hole at receiver. You still have a major hole at tight end. You still need an extra pass rusher, especially since we don't know what's going to happen, how quickly Okafor is going to be back to form. And you'd still like some depth on that back end, being a playmaking linebacker or another help in the secondary. So now you've just told me that you've moved in, you moved up to get your a quarterback of the future. Be that as it may, whether he is or isn't, you don't have a pick again until 127, and you're supposed to be a Super Bowl contender. I hate that move. I hate it.
Well,
Sorry.
I told
you just present as hell. You know that?
What?
You don't like Baker. That's all it is.
No, I don't. But I don't like the move either.
Yeah,
listen,
Bob.
I get it, and I understand why you feel the way that you do, and I don't make light of that or discount that. And as far as the argument that you made about basically salvaging the immediate future for the now, I'm not saying that is inherently necessary. You have Drew Brees locked in for another 2 years?
Mm-hmm. 2 seasons, yeah.
And as Alan has alluded to several times before on this broadcast, I think that the overwhelming mindset and approach needs to be: you've got a Hall of Fame quarterback got a Hall of Fame player in the most important position on the playing field. You need to capitalize on that while you have that at your disposal. And to quote David Farragut, "Damn the torpedoes full speed ahead."
Yeah.
I'm not saying that priority number one for the New Orleans Saints at this point in time is replacing Drew Brees, but at the same time, you can't have tunnel vision to where you see nothing for the next 2 months when you need to be looking at the next 2 years. And by that I mean I'm looking at the options coming down the pipe at quote unquote franchise quarterback, and the pickings are even slimmer in the next 2 years coming up than the past 2 years going by. So basically, you're going to get a Mitch Trubisky, which he set the world on fire for 13 games for North Carolina State, and translated that into a first-round draft pick of the Chicago Bears. What has he done since? He's proved that he was not worthy of that draft pick, in my opinion. Nothing against Mitch Trubisky. I don't think he was worthy of the Bears. Well, long story short, I don't think he was worth what the Bears did to get him. But it's kind of a 6 of one, half a dozen of another. If you really think about it and you look at it, because if the Saints wait until Drew Brees says, "Thank y'all, I retire," it's too late. But according to 99.7% of Who Dat Nation, if you even entertain the thought that Brees needs to be replaced before he makes that announcement, you're too early. So I mean,
here's my take on it. I totally agree with everything Bob said. I think Bob is dead on right as far as short term. You look at what the other teams have done, including the Rams, but the Eagles, the Vikings, even the Carolina Panthers. You look at that. You look where the Saints are. They were 10 seconds away from being the NFC Championship game, their third NFC Championship game under Sean Payton. This team is ready to hit that next step, and they've got several holes they need to fill. I totally agree with all that. At the same time, I can see the other side of the argument. Like Sean was just saying, you look down the line at the potential franchise quarterbacks. If you like, and I'm not even going to talk about Lamar Jackson because I have my own issues with Lamar Jackson as far as him fitting this offense. It's not the kind of quarterback I like for this offense because I like more of a traditional drop back passer for this offense more than what Lamar Jackson offers. And I've talked about him before about how it becomes more of a quarterback centric offense about his skill sets, what he does as an athlete. And I don't think that translates well into what we are trying to build with the Saints. It's not a knock on the player. It's just how I see that player with the Saints. Another team, he's probably going to be a superstar, just not working well with the Saints. If you like Baker Mayfield that much that you think he is the successor to Drew Brees, then you go get him because now you have a young quarterback along with an Alvin Kamara, along with a Michael Thomas, along with a Ryan Ramczyk, a Marshawn Lattimore. You've got a young team that you have built or you are in the process of building.
Yeah.
So you are now setting the Saints up for success, not just 2 years for Drew Brees. If you think Mayfield is a future, you have just shot a cannon fire, a 16-inch gun from the USS New Jersey across the bow of every team in the NFC South. That we're not only back, baby, we're here to stay. We're going to be a pain in your ass for the next 15 seasons. You're not going to win this division for the next 15 seasons, or if you're going to win it, it's going to be a bloodbath because we've got another young gun that you've been going, oh, man, when is Drew Brees going to retire? When are we going to finally get rid of the Saints and have them stop being a pain in the ass for us in the division? Oh, no. They got Mayfield, and you gave him Michael Thomas, and he has Alvin Kamara to hand off to, and he's got a young offensive line and a young defense. That is something
and when you put him off the field, you got Cam Jordan and Marshawn Lattimore.
Exactly. You just keep bringing it out. Young players across the board. Does that help you for 2018? No. But does it set you up for 2020, 2021, 2022? Yes. So I can see the wisdom in both sides. I just don't want it to be, I worry that 2018 would be a down year if you take Mayfield now. But if you take Mayfield now, you also have set yourself up for a strong future. So it's a tough decision that I can see the Saints arguing about on draft day in the draft war room about making trades, and let's just see what we can do. If it's worth it to make that move. It hurts us for 2018, but it sets you up for the long term. And that's what the draft is really about, is the long term of your franchise. So
sure, absolutely agree with all that too. I'm not one of those. As much as I would love to see Drew play until he's 130 years old.
Oh yeah.
I'm a realist. I'm a realist, and we've talked on here before about. I think all three of us have liked what the Saints have been doing in building their entire roster. You look at how much talent is on this team that's 26 years old or younger.
Yeah.
And again, I will be very careful about what I say about Lamar Jackson, the player, or player. I stand by what I said about. You're not mortgaging your future to necessarily move to get him. It's just, if you tell me, and the Saints coaches are obviously going to feel much more comfortable about this than what the three of us are sitting here. If they are confident in what they already have on that roster, that they feel that they are a Super Bowl team now, if they don't add another player on it, then make your move to get your quarterback. From Catbirds, I see too many holes that I see the ability to fill with a draft pick. And as far as I understand what both of you said, as far as looking into the quarterbacks of 2019 and projecting for 2020. But remember what a lot of people were saying about even Baker Mayfield or Josh Rosen a year and a half ago. that they were already bust and that they were not going to be pro-ready quarterbacks. And now they're each projected to potentially be top 5, certainly top 10 picks. I'm sorry, guys. If I'm the general manager or the head coach of the New Orleans Saints, I don't make the move to go up and get these guys. If one of them falls to me at 27, far different story. Or I might toy around with moving into the second round and picking up a Mason Rudolph if I like him or something like that. I just don't. I don't trade the picks that I have now to go get my quarterback.
Yeah, and here and of course, let me put this last caveat out there, and then we're gonna have to wrap it up. If you're wrong, if we're wrong about Mayfield or Jackson, and we make this kind of move, you've really set the or Jackson. You've really set the franchise back. Yeah, that's it. But I mean, if you make that kind of move, you set your franchise back considerably. Because if this turns out to be a Garrett Grayson kind of pick, I mean, the Saints have only taken one quarterback in the first round of the regular draft in the entire franchise history. And that was for Archie Manning. So they don't do this very often. If you're wrong about the player, then you've really hurt your franchise. I've grown to really, really like Mayfield. I'm not so confident, like you said, we've got too many holes in this roster. We kind of overachieved a bit last year that I think we'll have a hard time repeating that kind of level of performance. That we have holes that we need to have addressed. That free agency was not that good to us. That we need all of our draft picks to make that last run. And then let's see. Maybe the kid from North Carolina State, I think, is one of the ones that people are looking at for next year. Maybe we'll see if there's another Mayfield, another, Josh Allen quarterback come up for next year's draft. So, it's a fun debate to have, and I guarantee it's a debate that the Saints coaching staff and scouts are having right now about whether to make that move or not. And it's going to be very, very tempting if he's still there at 8, 9, and 10. I'm telling you that, it's like hurricane warnings. That track, as it starts moving closer and closer to the city, people get more and more anxious. So as that draft starts sliding, the best that could happen, I guess, to kind of alleviate all that is for the Jets to go ahead and take Mayfield at 5, or 3, I think they are. So we'll see how it plays out.
For all of those who know me, know that I am diehard Crimson and Cream Oklahoma Sooner. Jim Ross is maybe the only more Sooner than I am, and that's just because he gets more airtime than I do. That being said, the line of departure between a Baker Mayfield and a Mason Rudolph. Long story short, in my honest opinion, a Baker Mayfield has had more opportunities against a greater caliber of competition than a Mason Rudolph. That's not to say that a Mason Rudolph given the opportunity to turn under a Sean and or with a Drew Brees, Tom Savage would not be able to flourish in this offense. But there's one point that I would love to make. The days, and this is strictly my opinion, and I get argued on this, and people have talked about my lineage based on my opinion on this. The days of your Joe Montana and your Tom Brady, your next franchise guy being picked up in the 3rd, 4th, 7th, whatever round, those days are gone. The game has progressed to a point where that's not going to happen anymore. Your franchise quarterbacks now are going to be in the first 10 picks of the draft. You may find one once every decade, once every 20 years that precedes that, but by and large, that's going to be the deal. That's the way that the game is set up, and that's the way that it's cultivated now. As far as the New Orleans Saints, as much as I would love to see Baker Mayfield decked in black and gold, grabbing his crotch, wearing black and gold, and turning the helmet sideways, outside of a minor miracle involving much prayer and probably some holy water, I don't see it happening. Therefore, I believe that the Saints are going to have to move on in terms of their draft strategy to something that is less important, but something along the lines of an edge rusher, possibly at tight end. If you invest first-round draft pick in a player in the National Football League, you are not just trying to make a splash. You're investing a pick in someone that you're looking at and expecting to make an impact on your franchise for the next decade. No more, no less. You're looking at an investment in the next decade for your franchise, because that's basically what it's going to cost you to make that draft and to sign this guy, so on and so forth. You need to make the most of that.
Well, I totally get that, and I totally agree. Hey, listen, we got to wrap up because we were already way over time. Bob, how can people follow you, and let us know the name of your podcast again?
Well, first of all, the podcast will be called The Bayou Blitz, and it'll start next Wednesday, and it'll be every Wednesdays, 8:00 Eastern time, 7:00 Central time. And as we get closer to the date, I'll start posting links through the different Facebook pages and Twitter, on how to listen to live. And I'm going to try to get elicit as much participation as what I can with the fans too. So having said that, you can follow me on Twitter at BobbyR2613, and my articles and my work can still be followed through the Canal Street Chronicles, as well as John Hendricks and plenty of other terrific writers over there at Saint CSC. Both Canal Street Chronicles and myself are on Facebook as well. And Facebook, I love to interact with fans and different questions about football too. You can ask these guys. Sometimes I'm even nice about it. But thank you both for having me on the show again, as always. And
the first interaction I had with him, he talked about my mother. So.
And to kind of wrap it up the same way we started it, you're going to make it after all. Sean, go ahead and throw your hat up in the air. And good luck on your podcast. And we're looking forward to seeing it. And as always, we'll be glad to guest like we had you on ours. We'll be glad to guest on yours and make you go for an hour and a half.
Well, it'd be my honor, and hell, I'll be back on with you guys in a couple weeks. Only I'll be dressed in costume then.
Absolutely, we got the big draft show coming up, so
that's right.
We'll see you on that.
I've never got to plug that on the show.
Yeah, well, go ahead and plug it last minute.
2 weeks from tonight, April 24th, 7 p.m. start time, 1 hour earlier than normal. We're going to have our very special pre-draft show, which we have named in honor of one of our very earliest followers, Donnie Lambert, who unfortunately earlier this past year, we lost in her battle with cancer. But we've chosen to nonetheless keep that name attached to this because it means something to us. And what we do is the first hour of the show, we have a very special guest, and waiting on confirmation now, but it's looking like we have a very special guest lined up. And that being said, in the second hour of our expanded 2-hour format, we will be doing a live first round mock draft where we will be hosting journalists from around the country to do a live first round mock draft. And we will be using, obviously, we will be allowing no trades to happen, so y'all can get over that. But each rep that we have will be responsible for drafting for an entire division, and we will go all the way through the first round. We did this last year, and it was our most viewed episode of the season. So hopefully by next week we'll be able to announce who our very special guest is. Like I said, I'm waiting on confirmation so that I don't myself look like an idiot any more than I do every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time.
Okay. Yes. We're looking forward to that. And
I'm sorry, I had to use that 70s radio voice.
Yeah, you got that. You got your radio voice going. But yeah, we're looking forward to that, and it's a lot of fun. You know, none of it. I think we got a few names right last year, but for the most part, it's just fans guessing, trying to plug in players that fit that position. So
basically, we got right that it was the 2017 draft. That's
about it. That's about it. But anyway, thank you guys as always for sticking with us as long as we've been on tonight. You know, when we start talking about the draft, there's just more and more stuff to talk about. We'll talk some more next week about Cameron Meredith and what happened with him, and we'll talk some more about other opportunities the Saints may look at late in the draft, especially in that day three position where those kind of players that maybe our next David Onyemata may come from. So in the meantime, thank you guys for joining us. We'll see you next time on Under the Dome. Good night, everybody.
Love you guys.
Thank you, Bob.